we've been going position group by position group, sort of evaluating who's there, who's a free agent, who's coming back, who should come back, who shouldn't. And we moved to the linebackers. And I think everybody's in agreement. I think this is about as unanimous as you might ever get with a fan base and media and everybody else, and that is Ernest Jones. He's a free agent. And I would say he did very well for himself in the way of creating a market if one wasn't there prior to his arrival here, maybe raising the amount of money was expected to make versus what he will make. I think he's a crucial part of this defense, and I would have to believe Mike Macdonald thinks so too. So to what ends they go to bring him back, he's made it clear he'd like to come back. I think it's not even close. That's your biggest priority in this position group is to get Ernest Jones back because I won't say he single-handedly turned things around, but I think he, along with Tyrice Knight getting thrown in there, and he was the mentor to Tyrice Knight, that switch was huge for them. And then everybody started playing well. I mean, obviously Devin Witherspoon, Leonard Williams are the two standouts on that side of the ball, but Ernest Jones was right there with those guys.
It's crazy the impact that a mid-season trade, not that we thought it was a throwaway, but just, they need bodies. They had cut Tyrell Dodson. All right, they're trading Jerome Baker. You're bringing in this guy, Ernest Jones, who had just been on the Rams, now not even a full season on the Titans. For him to come in and completely revitalize the defense gives you a lot of confidence in Mike Macdonald's ability to identify linebacker talent and then kind of coach and develop them in his system and in his vision. So that's very encouraging. Not so encouraged. What?
When they made the move to bring him over, he's coming from the Titans.
Oh, yeah, I had no idea.
Were your normal negative, well, he's coming from the Titans.
No, he had barely been there. That's the thing. I had no idea of what he could do. He was still kind of in that system, and the Titans have such a good defensive line.
I can't remember what you said at the time, but anybody who was formerly with the Titans, you're generally like, yeah, it doesn't matter. They're not any good.
He was such an unknown. There was no sample size on him because he had played behind a great defensive line in L.A. and then another good defensive line in Tennessee, so you really didn't know the impact he would have. But now you go to, okay, he's not just the priority for the linebacker group. He might be priority number one this offseason. You have the contract situations with Geno and DK, but they're on the roster. They're still on the roster this year. You don't have a linebacker if you don't have Ernest Jones. You have Tyrice Knight, and then some guys that have kind of cycled through. There's some practice squad guys that have been bodies, but you don't have another inside linebacker if you don't have Ernest Jones. You have to bring him back to keep that stability. I just wonder what the price will be, what the going rate will be for linebackers, because we saw this past offseason, an offseason ago, the Seahawks did not re-sign Jordan Brooks. And Jordan Brooks goes to Miami. He gets a 3-year, $26.25 million contract. Is that the range now that Ernest Jones is looking for?
Yeah, I would say probably. A, I'm guessing. Well, he knows that better than anybody, obviously. But B, he was and I like Jordan Brooks. I thought Jordan Brooks was a solid linebacker for this team. I would say Ernest Jones was decidedly more impactful. He was just a guy who made splash plays. He was a guy that you noticed, and he seemed to have an impact. Great players will, as we always hear, often make the guys around them, the players around them, great. And I think he had that impact on Tyrice Knight and just his presence. And we heard other players talk about it. He had a different impact than Jordan Brooks in a positive way. And that's not in any way, shape, or form a knock on Brooks. I think he's what they had been looking for. I think he's the type of linebacker that Mike Macdonald loves in his defense. And he proved it. He proved how he fits. And I think he's a guy that was embraced immediately. We had a chance to talk to him. Seems to have an awesome attitude. People love him in that locker room. And at the end of the season, he was asked how he feels about his future here in Seattle.
Yes, I'm feeling pretty confident here. I think both sides, want to get something done. We just got to come to a mutual agreement, and and whatever those numbers or whatever those situations or whatever that may be, that's what that's going to be. But I think both sides are working towards that, and I think it will.
Yeah, I mean, there's no hesitation. There's no, hey, well, let's see how it goes. They're going to do their thing. I'm going to do my thing and see what's out there. And he made it very clear he wants to be back here. And that's got to be, if it's not a top priority, it's amongst the top priorities. And it sounds like they were probably maybe having conversations before the season ended. His reps, not maybe so much Ernest, but his reps in the team. So maybe they're close to something already. Who knows?
And I think it's going to be in that $9 to $10 million a year range because the price always goes up, and the Seahawks have to find some money now, which we have talked about possible moves they have to make, which pulls from your resources elsewhere. But if you re-sign Ernest Jones as priority number one, then you can focus on, all right, we have at least some stability at safety, at linebacker, because you do have Tyrice Knight on his rookie contract. That was the biggest hit maybe outside of Ernest Jones. Getting Tyrice Knight in and realizing you have something there, an immediate producer at that position. Because the one-year deals for Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson, you're always going to be in a situation where you had to replenish them. So they were the two starters, but that was nothing certain past this year anyway. So now you have at least one spot locked up. Tyrice Knight, you'll have him for a few more years. He was raw coming in, and Mike McDonald loved his ability, as he said, to just pile up tackles. So you have that going for you. Make that sacrifice financially to get Ernest Jones in here, and then that position becomes one of the strengths on this roster.
Yeah, and the beauty of Knight showing what he did is he's the one draft pick from last year that any of the analysts, the experts outside of Seattle looked at and went, kind of a not that he was ever bad, but like you could have picked him up later. Mm-hmm. That was the one reach, and he was as impactful as he was. I felt like he had more of an impact than Byron Murphy did. I know, again, plays a different position that it's easier to see their impact. You know, Murphy, you get buried in an area where stats don't pile up for that spot. But I think he ended up having a very solid year that sort of justified the pick that was referred to as a reach.
Yeah, and then both fourth-round picks, I think, now might be your futures at those positions. So A.J. Barner, you and Dave, when we did the tight ends, talked about this, that he came on, he might have been the most unexpected producer, especially on offense. And when we've talked about the Noah Fant, very expensive cap hit this year, if he's released, then you have A.J. Barner, who showed that he can be perhaps a good receiving option when he was more known as a blocking tight end. So A.J. Barner, Tyrice Knight, this is what good teams do. They replenish and restock through the draft. So if you have these starters on these subsequent draft classes, this is the path to getting towards that Super Bowl contention window.
Yeah, one more here. This from Mike McDonald on how important Ernest Jones, getting back to him, was for the team this season.
Yeah, very, very important. I'm sure the reason we have that is his contract situation, and we understand what's going on with it. And I think you just got to trust the process at this point. And I definitely trust that. Trust all the people involved, Ernest and his agent, and our people here, and confident that we're going to see a lot of Ernest for years to come.
So, yeah, there's just a level of certainty to these comments that tells me, all right, they'd been working on it. There's something's going to get done. I'd be stunned if Ernest Jones signed anywhere else. I think he's going to get re-signed.
Mike McDonald, was pretty open to talking about that, which we know how tight-lipped coaching staffs and front offices are. And Ernest Jones was pretty open to talking to it. If it had been adversarial, or if he had thought that maybe there's not a chance he's coming back, I don't think he answers that question in the post-game media availability. And then with us on that final interview, and I think it sounded like he was driving out of town. He was leaving for the end of the season, but he came on and talked, and you guys had a great interview with him. So the fact that he is talking about that gives you optimism, but it really does all start with Ernest Jones on defense. I mean, he wears the green dot now. He's the guy who is the Mike McDonald, the voice in his head. So he's his extension out there on the field.